So I hit streaming.
Are you going?
So let's see what we get.
It looks like we
Yeah,
are.
it looks like we're going, huh?
Are we live?
Yeah.
Are we live?
Hey, we're live.
We are live.
All right.
Guys, welcome.
Hi.
We have Pastor David Go and Pastor Janelle Go. Welcome. So we're going to wait for a couple minutes for some people to join us. Hey, Glenda. Hey, Diane.
Hey, guys.
Mona. Hey, Jenny. What's up, Elizabeth? We are glad you guys are with us. All right, we are, more, look at this. Guys, we have got some things going on. It sounds like people want to hear what you've got to say, so.
How nice.
Happy Wednesday, middle of the week. Here we are. All right, Instagram is live. Someone on the other end say hello, so make sure we're going there.
Hi, Instagrammers.
All right, cool. All right, so we have got a lot of people who have joined us. Hey, Rochelle. Hey, Jesse. What's up, Amy? Hey, Sandra. Megan. All right, guys, so Wednesday night, we switched to Wednesday night this week to kind of just fill it out and reach a different demographic. We know that some of you guys work during the day, so Pastor David and Janelle wanted to do a Wednesday evening. So first we're going to hear from Pastor David, and then we're going to go into a live Q&A. Thank you for the people who have submitted your questions ahead of time. Very much appreciated, and it's going to be great. It'll be a great night. Yeah, no, it'll be awesome. So, okay, Pastor David, take it away.
Well, I don't know what your days have been like. My day started off amazing because I woke up and I found my stimulus check had been deposited into my bank account. I had a really nice, quiet morning, enjoyed my cup of coffee, read a great chapter in Isaiah, spent some time in prayer, then had a lot of energy thinking about certain adjustments at the church long term, got a couple long emails put together to engage the team on those questions. Had some good time focusing on the project I was working on, and then I hit 11:30 and it's like the bottom dropped out, and I was like physically, mentally, and emotionally in like a molasses fog for like 3.5 hours, and I'm trying to will myself to get moving, trying to will myself to get back to the project I was working from, and the more I could not do that, I could not even find like the on switch to any energy. So the only thing I accomplished was feeling bad. That what's wrong with me? Why can't I throw a gear right now and get back, to the things that I have the time to do right now? Then made a phone call. Someone in the congregation then shared with me a miracle from God relationally. Relationships that for 30 years they had had no contact with, and suddenly, spontaneously, over Easter, they had an Easter miracle where there was a divine reconnection, and they even found out that someone who was involved in these relationships they'd been praying for years. That person had come to believe in Jesus. And that's awesome. Brightened my day up. But I've been thinking through this day about just being so human, yet at the same time trying to follow Christ, be part of our faith community during this time. And so I started to think through Paul's words. 2 Corinthians 5:17 is probably one of the favorite scriptures of anybody, in all the Bible. If anyone is in Christ, he or she is a brand new creation. The old has passed away and the new is here. And a verse we celebrated over Easter was a few verses later than that, where God made the one who knew no sin sin on our behalf, that we could become the righteousness of God. Amazing verses, tells us that we have an identity in following Jesus that has nothing to do with our humanity being weighed down, but we are a new creature in Christ. But what follows then in the next two chapters, chapters 6 and 7, we often don't connect to that sort of triumphant statement of Paul. And he writes in 2 Corinthians 6, beginning in verse 4, about the hardships he's going through. Even though he says, the new has begun in me, he still talks about feeling very, very human and experiencing things that really sort of push him to the edge of his ability to cope. So this is what verse 4 says in chapter 6. But as servants of God, we commend ourselves in every way by great endurance in affliction, hardship, calamities, beatings, imprisonment, riots, labors, sleepless nights, hunger, by purity, knowledge, patience, kindness, the Holy Spirit, genuine love, by truthful speech, by the power of God, with the weapons of righteousness for the right hand and for the left, through honor and dishonor, through slander and praise, we are treated as impostors, but yet are true, as unknown and yet well known, as dying, but behold, we live, as punished, but yet not killed. Sounds like, just a strong individual of faith going through difficult times with a lot of courage and strength. But then the next verse says, as sorrowful, yet always rejoicing, as poor, yet making many rich, as having nothing, but possessing everything. And after sharing not only his fight for faith, but also the sorrow within his heart, he says, we have spoken freely to you, Corinthians. Our heart is wide open. Then in the next chapter he says, and even when we came into Macedonia, our bodies had no rest, but we were afflicted at every turn, fighting without and fears within. But God, who comforts the downcast, comforted us by the coming of Titus. See, it's interesting to me that although that Paul, the one who declared, I'm a brand new creation in Christ, the old has passed away, the new has come, could also acknowledge that he was sorrowful. In the midst of all these trials and tribulations and stresses and pressures, that he was fighting his way through with the weapons from God on the right hand, on the left, but he could also acknowledge that he was feeling himself sad, sorrowful. He numbers himself with the downcast, who God then comforts. And he feels free to say, I don't have to hide any of this from you. My heart is wide open. That even though he's not being a hypocrite by saying, we've experienced something amazing in Christ, our sins are forgiven, we've been made brand new creations, and yet we're still very much in our humanity, in a world full of pain, and he feels sorrow. He gets downcast. He even says, I have fears within. And I think that one of the challenges about going through times like this, where our routines, no matter if you're working harder now than you have in normal time, or you have a lot of open time that's unscheduled, or maybe a mix of both. Some hours are very, very focused, and then sometime it just seems it's so wide open, it's so floating. I think that it's important for us to learn to acknowledge that even while we are doing our best to fight and soldier on in faith, and rightly so, that we are mission focused and we are eternally minded in what we do, that we can also acknowledge that, hey, I'm sad right now, or I am feeling overwhelmed, or I'm being numbered among the discouraged that God really needs to come and give comfort to, that there's a part of my heart that's afraid about certain things, even while I'm struggling to place my faith in the Lord. And so that sort of helps me. I don't know if it will help you, but it sort of just helps me cope with myself, because as someone who really loves getting grades, I need to know where I stand on the levels of success. When we are in a time like this, how do you measure whether I'm doing okay or not? And I think that what I'm learning is that we can't measure ourselves by any previous standard. We can't measure ourselves by any sort of image in our mind about how we should be, but it's better to just get attuned to both realities in our heart, that yeah, we are people of faith, and we are pursuing in faith. We're not limited by other people's decisions or by other people's attitudes. And at the same time, realize I get sad sometimes. I get tired sometimes, and I need encouragement. One thing which was very real to me is that Paul says what broke him out of this feeling of discouragement was actually Titus coming to visit him. And that was actually the agent that God used to lift his spirits, to encourage him. And for me today, after an afternoon that was really, really flat, it was this phone call from a member of our church and sharing with me a testimony that actually sort of recentered me and encouraged me. And I would say to us as a family, and those of you who are even just friends now of the garden tuning in, that more than ever, we need each other. And we don't have the convenience of having a scheduled time every week where we all land up in the same area and we can wave hi and we can have either a short conversation or a lengthy conversation. We don't have to be intentional except to get ourselves to the facility. We have to actually recognize that in our humanity now, we need to be intentional in giving and receiving encouragement from each other. And we're not failing if we're feeling low and discouraged. And what we really might need actually is just another human being to exchange some text with, or get on the phone with, or just engage us with. And their story and our story, when we put them together, will end up encouraging each other. So I'm glad that we are new creatures in Christ. I'm glad we can also recognize that that new creation has been birthed in the midst of still being very human, and in a world that is bombarding us with all sorts of different realities. And we can be authentic in our faith by trying to fight the fight of faith, and we can be authentic in our faith by also acknowledging what we may be going through inside from time to time, the sorrow, the fear, the anxiety that's there. And as we're honest, I think, with what we're going through inside, God's going to be faithful to send encouragement our way. Oftentimes that's going to be another human being. So that's where my thoughts have been today.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Pastor David. We would like to open it up to some questions. So if you guys have any questions for Pastor David or Pastor Janelle, she's got some letters behind her name, some experience in life, but she is, kind of well versed in a lot of these topics. And so we did have some questions submitted ahead of time, and so we're going to direct a few of these at you, Janelle.
Okay.
And so first, how do you know if you have anxiety or if you are just fearful? And can you explain to us the difference between the two?
The definition of anxiety is, overwhelming fear, where it affects I think the kind of defining line is how much of your life is it affecting? Are you able to function? Are you able to go to work? Are you able to have relationships? And if your fears are overwhelming you so much that it's inhibiting those areas of your life, and all it is a diagnosis. But you want to be aware of the fact that if it's so overwhelming and you've tried to get help and you can't, it may be something that you do need kind of to see a doctor for.
Okay, that kind of leads into the next question. How do you know if you're just sad or if you are actually dealing with depression?
Good question. I think sadness is part of depression. Depression is, again, something that affects our functioning. Can we go to work? Can we go to school? Can we maintain relationships? And if things are so overwhelming to us that we can't, if we're not sleeping, again, depression affects many parts of our lives that people would not necessarily associate it with, like eating, overeating, spending money. You know, sometimes we try to feel sadness by spending too much money, or overeating or over drinking. In children, it's irritability. So I think, and there's, depression that is long term, and there's situations that are depressing. So I think, again, seeking out professional help if you don't get any kind of relief within, I would say, 2 weeks.
That's great, because that leads right into the next question.
Okay.
How do we deal with that sadness? So yes, there is the option to go seek out help, whatever that may look like, whether it's calling a friend, a pastor, a mentor, or a licensed care professional. How do we deal with it?
Well, again, my bent is I always like, to see somebody that is objective, where you feel like you can get, an information and an opinion that, that can be really clear and not, sometimes if you go to too many close friends, they're afraid to tell you, kind of maybe the truth. But I think one of the coping skills, and David brought it up today, is connecting with each other. That's, if you're feeling sad, and I think you have to listen to yourself. What am I feeling? What am I needing? Am I tired? Maybe I need rest. Am I lonely? Maybe I need a friend. Maybe I'm feeling overwhelmed. Well, maybe I need to make a list. Maybe I need to find a resource for exercise, those kind of things. I think so many times we work and especially when our lives have been busy, we do a lot to suppress some of these feelings. So I think the time that we've had all together, home, alone, and not having to work, has brought up a lot of, oh my gosh, I just have to care for myself. And sometimes we're not so good at that. I think, especially, our busy lives, we fill it with so many other things than caring for ourselves.
So it seems like, from what you were saying, what everyone is experiencing in some capacity is self-awareness. So,
Could be.
The feelings are there. And you were describing at one point, there's things that we can control, things that we can't control, and then there's some type of gray area. Can you kind of explain what that is?
Well, I think the gray area is, the pressure we put on ourselves to control everything, and I think especially, as parents, because that's what we've been doing for 30 some odd years, there's, we want to make everybody happy, and we want to make it good for everything. We want to protect. We want to give the very best to everybody that's in contact with us, and especially, with the church, we're really saddened. We don't just feel the things for our own family, but for our church family too. The gray area comes with things that we feel responsible for. Sometimes those aren't things that we should be feeling responsible for. We have a small circle of things that we can control, and it usually has to do with what the Lord's given us to be in charge of. And the number one thing He's given us to be in charge of is ourself, and our the circle around us. So being out of control and trying to control things is, I think, one of the greatest things we struggle with, especially at times like this.
Yeah, I think that it's very hard to know where that boundary is between caring for somebody or their situation and feeling responsible to try to alleviate it. Without knowing that line, we do end up feeling responsible for a lot of things that are basically out of control. You may be, leading a small business, and you simply don't have money to pay your employees, and you're going to have to lay employees off. And those employees, if you've done your business correctly, they're going to feel like family to you. But if you don't have the money to give them, you can't feel responsible at that point to pay them. But you can be very concerned, and you can be praying for them, and you can help them find their way through unemployment or those things. But I think that we have to allow ourselves to sort of get clear, and the Lord to help us to know we can care about a lot of people, but the people that we are actually have the capacity to make a difference in what they're experiencing, that's actually a lot smaller number. And so prayer is amazing. We can intercede for things that we have no ability to really help on our own, but we can't necessarily take that anxiety within ourselves, or even that sense of guilt that there must be something I could do to make their situation better.
Right, and I think boundaries is something that's extremely important for us to learn as adults, as parents, and teach as children, because I think we think of boundaries as keeping all the bad out. We have a fence, and we want to keep the bad dogs and the people that are scary out. But what boundaries do also is it keeps the good in. If we only have so much capacity, and we're letting our resources and our care out to just anybody or to everybody, there's going to be little for who we're supposed to be caring for. And even Jesus was very particular about who he cared for. Like he would be in crowds and they would be pulling at him, and he'd be, no, I'm on my way to pray for someone's sick, and he had to say no to some people, and that's a boundary. And I think the same charge is for us. Is like we have to figure out who we're responsible to.
I think in this time too, everybody's need is elevated. All our routines have been broken. There's anxiety for finances, and then for many now, there's actually crisis over finances.
Absolutely.
There's. I was talking to one of our political leaders before I came up here, and she was telling me that she got a call from a veteran who had been on her husband had helped go on an honor flight, and he says, I don't have anybody else to call. My kids live out of state, they can't get over here, but I don't have any food.
Oh wow.
It's like that's a reality for some people right now, is that people who served our country honorably, they can't access even basic groceries. And as busy as this individual was, she actually ran over a box of food. But it's we're all going through a lot of things. All of us are going through discomfort, but we have to realize some people around us are actually now entering crisis. And so everyone is feeling needy. If we don't allow clarity in our heart on what our assignment is, we will just get overwhelmed, I think, by that need and just feel like we're failing in everything. But if we hear the Lord to say, make that one phone call or take groceries to this one family, it's amazing how good we feel having done that one thing that the Lord really directed us to, that we become Titus at that point. We are sent on an assignment to somebody who's down or discouraged, and we accomplish that task. And we trust the rest of the body of Christ and God himself to take care of the other needs that we're aware of, but we don't have an assignment to go necessarily be responsible for.
And that's another way of kind of reversing the effects of sadness and depression, is helping someone else. You can't but feel good about yourself if you've helped someone else in need. And I think we don't give that enough credit. We talk a lot about with patients who are deeply depressed, go try to find a volunteer organization, try to find something to do that's not just about yourself. Because I think that's one of the greatest coping skills, is to find someone else who's in greater need than yourself, and that will help you feel valued and feel a sense of purpose.
Yeah, I watch also too. I track on Facebook or Instagram just so many of our stay-at-home parents right now, and the high intention to, we're going to cook all organic, healthy meals every single meal for our children. We're going to get them accelerated past the next grade. What you feel the first hour when your kids were, maybe home if you weren't completely overwhelmed, but I don't know anybody out there right now who really feels like they're succeeding.
Yeah.
And I think that what my heart is, what I'd like to shout onto Facebook is, you got to give yourself grace.
Right.
And to differentiate for us between laziness, where I'm not trying, to grace, which means I've tried as hard as I can, and allow ourselves to come into that sense is our lives, the lives of our family, our church family, they're in bigger hands than our own. And so if we give what we have, we can actually trust the Lord that He's helping those around us, people we love very, very much, with what we wish we could give them, but we just don't have any more left to give. And I think that if we model that peace and trust to those that look to us, as primary helpers or support in their life, we give them an invaluable gift also. We give them also the permission to not be perfect, to know that we all need grace right now, and at the same time also feel like we can have peace in that process. So just bless all our parents who are staying at home. You got a lot on your hands, and you got the help of God.
Yeah, and you probably have very little you feel in control of, and I think that is, super important. It's like anybody that's starting a new job, let alone you didn't get any running up time, and you didn't really sign up for this new job, staying at home, homeschooling, having to protect, I think, kids that don't necessarily understand why they're being secluded. It's a tough job, and so we really as a church family want to support you with things like Facebook, drive-by Easter parades, and those kind of things.
We can't tell you how good it was to actually see your faces on Easter and that journey. It's different than looking at your picture on Facebook, and it just meant so much to us. To just physically, even though we couldn't, physically connect, but just be there in each other's space and see our families. That was just amazing.
And shout out to all those really cool costumes and efforts the host houses did. I mean, some of those were amazing. We're just super blessed to have such creative people in our midst, and we were blessed again to just see you guys drive by. It was so hard not to go in and hug you.
Shout out to Pastor Christy who dreamt up this whole thing.
Yes.
And, her birthday was yesterday.
Yes.
And,
yay! Happy birthday.
We are so appreciative of her and all that she brings to our church family.
Everything, yeah, and all the parents who, really came out and brought their kids by, to let their kids know it's an important event to celebrate Easter.
Are we back?
Oh.
We don't know when we left.
We didn't know when we left.
I know when we left.
Oh, okay. I'm sure it was something very important.
Let's see.
Hang on.
Coming back. Isn't there a song about that? It's all coming back. No?
Don't know that one.
All right.
Did you miss us?
Are we back? I don't think we're back.
So give me a wave if we're back on, guys.
I'm waving, but my arms aren't moving.
We're frozen. I know there's a song about that.
Okay, there sure is. I think you guys were talking about the parade. Let's see, I think we are back on. So I think you were talking about, there was a special birthday that happened yesterday.
Oh.
Pastor Christy turned 50.
Pastor Chrissy turned 50. Should we tell? I mean, we should have put her age on camera.
She posted about it.
Oh, she did. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Oh, well, it froze on our end, so sorry about that. We are live, and that's the benefit of having live. So
that's right.
I guess we didn't freeze. Thank you for letting us know. So
it's just to show you, we actually aren't pre-recording this
That's
and
right.
pretending it's live, but we really are live.
We didn't practice this.
We didn't. No. So I'm going to segue from the things you were just saying. There was two people who put in questions simultaneously.
Okay.
Talking about emotional health and struggling with isolation. They're physically healthy, but emotionally they feel like they're barely hanging on. So that was one question. And then the second question was many people who right now may feel like a lack of purpose without work or ministry. So how would you, I feel like both of those may go hand in hand. So how would you encourage people who maybe struggling emotionally, and how do we identify emotional health versus like mental health versus depression, anxiety? Like, how do you differentiate that and kind of wade through those waters?
Well, I think they are extremely related. I think, that's why I believe in the church connection, because it can help all of the above.
Yeah, I think that sometimes we think of physical health and emotional health and spiritual health as though they were like three separate categories. So either I'm having a spiritual problem and I know it because I feel spiritually such a way, or I'm having an emotional stressful time and I know it because I'm showing these emotional signs, or I'm having a physical problem. Oftentimes, but those are not
related.
The symptom for where something is located actually shows up in another field of being. So I think that's partially what we sort out is sometimes we can feel like we're having a spiritual crisis, and really what we need to do is give ourselves the permission to sleep in one morning. And because what's happening in our body, it's sort of getting manifested in how we feel connected to God spiritually. And so I think that sometimes we just need to differentiate the fact that symptoms occur maybe in the field where the actual issue is, but oftentimes not in that field. And it's only by, sometimes those of you that process more verbally, you just sort of need to talk that out with somebody, talk that out with a friend. Those of us who process more internally, we need to take the time and sort of think through, now really where might this be coming from? I'm also real, even in regular life, I think the core is so important that each of us has sort of core disciplines, core activities every day that sort of set our mind, engage us to the Lord, clarify our purpose, and take care of our humanity. That without maintaining that core, when that gets interrupted, it usually shows up as a point of stress somewhere. And so in this time where a lot of our core routine is disrupted, I would encourage you to find a new routine. I was sharing the other, I'm not sure if it's posted yet, but one thing that's helped me is actually Janelle and I have started most nights now to take a walk after dinner. Just getting out of the house and out into the world and into a different environment. That sort of replaced our inability to go to the gym in the morning and stuff like that. But you have to find a different routine for all the areas of health: physical, emotional, and spiritual health.
And I think I would kind of add a different kind of spin to it, is to identify resources in your life. I think, we spend most of our time being so busy, caring for others, and now this is the focus time that we have to, kind of look at ourselves and what we need. But what resources? Who are the people, and it could be people, it could be activities. Who are the people in our lives that are most nurturing? Who are the people in our lives that are protective? And who are the people in our lives that are the most wise? And those can be great resources for us, especially when we don't know what's wrong. So I would say for anybody with, who is not feeling emotional healthy, is to kind of identify what resources you have. What activities do help you feel emotionally stable? It could be exercise. It could be creativity. I know there's a lot of, I had to go to Lowe's the other day, and I was thinking I'd be the only one there, but you would not know there was a pandemic at Lowe's because there were hundreds of people. But I think people are taking the time to kind of do some things, projects around the house, and those can be very fulfilling. But I think identifying what resources there are in your life, whether it's a person, maybe a place in your home that you feel that's calming, or an activity that you find relaxing and nurturing.
Something too that you might consider is when you feel sad, the Bible's promise is that God's joy becomes our strength at that point. And I find this oftentimes when I wake up with a sense of sadness, the last thing I want to do is put worship music on. I'll put any other music on, or I'll put the news on. But the last thing I really feel like doing is putting worship on. But as soon as I put worship on and I sort of ride into the grace of whoever is singing and the truth of those lyrics. So oftentimes I realized that sadness was not really deeply rooted in me. It was more like just something external that I was feeling, that like a weight, a garment upon me.
Yeah.
And worship will lift that. The garment of praise replaces that sort of sadness. Other times when it won't lift, then you know, oh, actually, I'm actually going through something pretty deep, and I need to focus on it in a different way.
Yeah, and I think you can also, especially in the church when we grow up singing songs that are scriptures, those will come to mind when you're in times of need, because the Lord's faithful to remember that He's the glory and the lifter of your head, and He's the one that provides a shield about you, or He's the one that is your shepherd. Those kind of things. Those scriptures will be, because they're deep in your heart and deep in your spirit, will be stirred up when you need them.
It's really good, you guys. A couple people wanted to know if you guys could put together some resources. I don't know if there's any books that you suggest, or specific books of the Bible. I know Psalms,
yeah.
you know, littered with just incredible. But if there's any other resources, maybe we could put something together and send that out to. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, our house needs gardening, so anybody that wants to come by and volunteer. Just kidding.
Okay, and then a couple people asked specifically how you guys deal with sadness. So you've kind of hit on that. You know, you go on walks, you're processing, you're worshiping. Are there any other practical tips or tools just to kind of let us inside of the go home?
The go home. We've been cooking together.
Yeah, that's been a good point of contact. I know partially for me too, it's just learning to read the signs. So when I feel stressed or I feel sad, I know some people sort of go into a blur. I go opposite. I get super detailed. And if you combine that detailed focus with some irritability, then you become a hard person to live with, a hard person to work with. So I think it was Saturday, we were cleaning up the kitchen together. I don't exactly remember. We were doing something in the kitchen, cleaning out the fridge or something like that. And I just kept finding more and more and more that needed attention. And finally I just said, you know, I'm feeling nervous about the sermon tomorrow. And once I just acknowledged that the symptom of just me being irritable and stroppy and was actually just a reflection of the stress I was feeling. I just said, I think I'll just go to the other room, you know. And so I think what's one thing that helps me, because you know, most men, our emotional language was hungry or angry. This is all we were taught. We don't really have the language to break down necessarily. It's sort of foreign to us to learn to actually give names that are specific to what we're feeling. So I think that we can recognize the signs sometimes of that may actually reflect a sadness within or a stress within, but it's manifested in certain behaviors. And once we just say, really, I'm not pouring all my energy into fixing what that behavior is about, of, you know, we just got to do this harder, or this got to get done here, or but instead, you know, all that's a sign that something's not at peace within. Then back off and just take care of it.
Yeah, but although cleaning is another coping skill, it's a very good one, because it's the one thing you can control. I can clean out that junk drawer, and it does feel really good. And I think too, you know, I did notice his irritability, but I didn't say anything because it was so much better when he identified it himself. And that's a key too. We want to stick to what we, you know, our feelings about ourselves, not other people. I mean, you could ask a question or two, but for the most part,
why are you so irritable?
Why are you so irritable? Yeah, why questions are not what we want to do. But and again, where in your body are you feeling that tension? Sometimes that's a really good key too. You know, a lot of anxiety is felt in your stomach or tightness in your chest. And those are your body signals telling you, you know, I'm feeling something and I need to fix it. I maybe need to go relax, or maybe I need to do more. You know, if there's a lot of tension, maybe, you know, doing some yoga or going on a run or a walk would be the best thing. Or maybe I need to watch something funny. Maybe I need to laugh. That would be another coping skill, is finding something funny. I see a lot of people on Facebook talking about their top 10 movies and what's the movie you can watch over and over again. Those are fun things, you know, to look to.
Good stuff. Okay, guys, we are going to segue into another set of questions that have been submitted. We tried to group them together. So the next two questions kind of go together. How do we continue to plan for the future when so much is in the air right now, up in the air, and then what are we supposed to be doing when we're at home?
Yeah, I think that when you can't control opportunities, doorways in the future, you can't control who you want to be when those opportunities exist or they don't exist. And so I do think this is a great time to say, what sort of person do I want to be when all of this is over? And we can control ourselves. We can control our spiritual connection. We can control our relational connections in terms of what we invest in them. We can control our physical health. And so that's, to me, there is always something that we can control. And there's always many things that we can't control. This situation has just sort of blown that up into bigger. It's much more in our face. I think the other thing that is true, but is that for what we're responsible for, this is actually a time to think through what sort of friendships or what sort of business or what sort of church we want to be when we come out of this. What have we learned that we need to invest more in this time? What do we want to continue to value at a high level going forward? And what have we found maybe takes a lot of energy or time and is really something that we don't really want to pick back up to that same degree? And I think that we can use the time for some clarification of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's absolutely right. It is a time, the future holds what the future holds. And who we want to be, how busy we want to be in the future, I think we have control over that. I know for sure my junk drawer is getting cleaned out, but I really feel, I mean, especially if you talk to little kids, little tiny kids, they love it. They love having their parents around. They love not being busy. And I think that is really telling that maybe they didn't need the 4 or 5 dance classes every week or the 32 activities per month. You know, I really feel like there's some really, really strong positive things that can come out of this time. I'm saying that now, you know.
We may feel differently 15 minutes from now.
Yeah, because neither one of us, because we're both in fields that are essential and are extremely busy right now. You know, we're not getting to stay home and not do anything, but I think it's a time that a lot of people are finding maybe old hobbies or things that they used to enjoy or wanted to try. You know, or, you know, maybe getting dressed was something that they didn't think they loved. But I think that there's only positive that can come out of this.
Yeah, I think that our lives are actually like a lot of you guys, is we actually have more to do without any of the normal rhythm structure to get stuff done in. And so it's not a vacation right now,
No.
but it can be productive.
Yes.
And that's what we just try to keep our eyes on.
Right. And insightful. We're asking the Lord for what insights He is giving us at this time. And I think if you do that, you'll feel the freedom to make this time count.
Do you guys have an expected date in your mind of when you think our community of church family is going to be able to gather again?
Well, safety and the well-being of our entire family is important to us. And that means our seniors and our kids in particular. And so that's obviously some of the guidelines. I sort of feel like California is running a couple weeks behind the East Coast, and we know Bakersfield is running a couple weeks behind Los Angeles. So I would not. I'd encourage you not to latch on to like the evening news and the schedule on the evening news, because it actually is the East Coast reality, not really what's happening on the West Coast. So that's a little bit. When I think about that too much, it's like, oh, this is hard. But as a staff, we're sort of targeting mid-May at the absolute earliest. End of May, as we would be really happy. But we are also saying, what if this runs for a while? The other thing, past that, into summer, the other thing which I do anticipate is that even when churches are allowed to regather, we will still be regathering, observing social distance. So coming to church will be very different. You'll likely, we'll do stuff like probably take your temperature before you go into the kids building. We'll be sitting in socially distanced spaces, and that's going to feel unusual. So I don't think we're all going to rush back into a big group hug. When the quarantine's lifted. I actually think there's likely an intermediate stage, and then there may be a separation also where we have some environments that those less at risk from the virus, less at risk for the effects of what the virus can do, are able to come together, and we'll have to continue to make special accommodations for those that are more at risk from the consequences of the virus.
Yeah, but again, I think you are the church. The church is not the four walls. We're gathering together, through Facebook. We're gathering together on the phone. We're gathering together in our spirits, praying for each other. So don't undervalue what's going on right now. I mean, I want those hugs. I really do. I'm a huggy person now. But I think that there is connection taking place right now.
And I would just say this too, as a team, staff and volunteers, we put hours every week into trying to make our Sunday morning experience for infants up to our oldest seniors a really valuable time. And as much as effort as we put into worship and community and teaching scripture and building community with our youth and our kids, I would tell you, if your Christianity was only an expression that took life on Sunday morning, then we don't have a Christianity that can change our world.
Yeah.
And so this is actually a good test of really how much active faith is in our life. Is without that thing of value, which is assembling together, can we still have an impact on the lives around us and on our community, on our city, through our faith? That has nothing to do with being able to assemble on a Sunday morning.
Right. And the stories that are surfacing. I love reading how people were given special gifts. People took meals to each other. I would really keep putting those on Facebook. They're encouraging. They're encouraging to our body. They're things that are positive. We're valuing each other in a different way than gathering is kind of what this time is about. And I'm hoping that those encounters will increase. I mean, even during this time, we're really seeing people come out of the woodwork, people that have these hidden talents. This lady sitting over there that's doing all sorts of amazing things, turned her house into a studio. I mean, that's really incredible. We're so blessed. You guys don't realize.
We have you guys.
Oh,
It's amazing.
group hug.
Group hug. There are multiple people right now who want to hug both of you for extended periods of time. Not uncomfortably, but
Uncomfortable.
they miss you. So a couple people wanted to know if they have ideas for volunteer opportunities or ways they want to serve. Is it okay if they bring those up? Are we encouraging that? Do we want to connect them to samuel.hook@gardencc.org?
Yes, in fact, our pastors and the team, the segment of our team that's most engaged in volunteer opportunities, that's what they're telling our entire staff, is people are wanting to do things that are significant. And so yeah, if you have ideas, I think we've got something maybe happening this Saturday. That's a great volunteer opportunity. I don't know enough detail, so I know not to talk about it yet. But that came up, I think, in a conversation. And it's like, hey, what about this idea? So yeah, your ideas are really valuable. So Samuel or Pastor Donna are the people to direct those two. And of course, with every idea, we need a champion. So your idea is not to volunteer somebody else, but your idea is to gather people around you as a volunteer, and together we can make a difference.
Right. Or if you, want to know about the churches, people that are in need, those kind of things. I think those are good opportunities to provide care to, there's our seniors or families that are underserved or marginalized. We really value, the time it would be to identify people that could meet those resources.
I would also encourage you to let us know not only an idea that could be helpful, but if you have time, what your skill is. And so if you are great with words, there's things that we can deploy you to, and it might be better for us to use that skill than to have you necessarily hand out food to a line of cars, although that's a worthy thing. If you have like gardening or landscaping skills, there might be an opportunity coming up in which we could use that, and that would be better for a contribution for something that you are naturally skilled at doing or gifted at doing, than necessarily deploying you into something more general as a volunteer opportunity. So we want to help as needed. That's always important. We also want to help as gifted, and just let us know if you have the time and sort of what you through life experience or through your job experience.
Awesome. Now we have a couple fun questions, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay. So there are a few people who want to know where you guys are eating these days. So we did hear you're cooking a lot. You're becoming your own Gordon Ramsay in your own kitchen and staying alive. But what are you guys have any favorite restaurants in town? Are there any favorite genres?
Let's see. You like lambs?
Yeah, I have certain comfort foods, but Lamb's Chinese Restaurant is a place. I used to go have a bowl of war wonton noodle soup every Monday. It was when we lived up in the Northeast, it was my reward for getting through Sunday, is that I would go, and I'm weird this way, but I like to go eat by myself.
Yes,
and so I would go have a bowl of soup there on Monday as a way to sort of, acknowledge a day off. And it's been part of the rhythm of my life for 35 years, pretty much. And so sometimes we, that's something we crave. We've been using Panini Kebab Grill.
Yes, that's one of our favorites.
And that's something our whole family enjoys and sort of transports well.
We're obviously big Trader Joe fans. We have discovered, and not very many people know about, the shiitake chicken frozen meal there. Delicious. Made it tonight. It lasted what, 3 meals, I think. So very good.
We had a tofu tonight, which I know is your favorite too. So
tofu. But where else do we, downtown. Oh, Noodle Bar. We take out from there. And then Mexican, we use Victor's, which is my favorite. I know, not your favorite, but that's okay.
The reason this question is not quite as active for me is I actually had a question in my heart a couple weeks ago. Do I want to end this next 60 days 10 pounds heavier or 10 pounds less? Because I would not have to do anything except continue to do what I was doing to end it at least 10 pounds heavier.
Right.
And so I've had to adjust the amount that I'm eating out, but we sure enjoy supporting local restaurants.
Right, yeah. And exercise, again, come full circle with our question about coping skills, is one of the best ways. And I know our dear friends and dear family church members, David and Alyssa McPherson, are running an online gym. If anybody's interested, you can they can hook you up with their online Zoom classes, which are there's about 4 to 6 a day. And so those type of things are really, really helpful, is focused exercise and team exercise.
And it looks like, since we're giving shout outs within the Garden family, that Jesse and Yuli Avila might be starting a meal prep business.
That's right!
So we've got to give a shout out to them. So Jesse and Yuli, you guys better work on that website.
Yeah!
Because we are now promoting you to hundreds and thousands of people.
That's right.
Yeah, Jesse's meal preps
is awesome.
what helped me get ready for Jordan's wedding.
Right, yeah.
I dropped a ton of weight during that time. And because he spoiled me
Right.
with his meal preps,
Yeah.
I've tried other meal preps and I've not been able to actually get back on them. But that salmon was really good, Jesse, that you do. And then the beef, I think it was maybe a tri-tip or
Right.
something like that. And so glad to hear you're considering getting back in the game.
And that's, I think, something really good to bring up. I think there's going to be an incredible resource of entrepreneurial spirit once this whole thing is going over in our church. I think people like Yuli and Jesse are going to come up with a business, and you know, I'm excited to see what the Lord's going to do during this time. I mean, I know it's scary, guys, but there are some really great things happening. But yes, the meal planning with Jesse is very good.
So Jesse and Yuli could do like comfort food with a little bit of comfort.
That's
Is
right.
that Jesse brings you a meal and
There you
Yuli
go.
will talk to you
Yes,
and process
that's
with
right.
you
Help you.
for a few moments as part of
Help
that.
you.
That would be an amazing
Right, and then you can go over to Dave and
opportunity.
Alyssa's gym.
Work it all off.
Work it all off. There you go.
That. So it sounds like they delivered.
Yes, yes. Well, that's what they used to do. I don't know if they'll still do that or not.
I'm volunteering you guys to deliver.
Yeah,
Just
there you
saying.
go.
All right, we are going to segue. Guys, what do you do for brainless activities at home?
Brainless. We're always looking for the good next Netflix marathon thing. I mean, that's kind of our go-to.
Yeah, my previous go-to was sports, watching sports. And
It's no
you
more.
can only watch so many replays of great games from 50 years ago before. So yeah, I tend towards trying to find a series that involves some sort of espionage, a few explosions going off, and looking for that. So that's sort of one way to.
And I look
them out.
for the more social, emotional, drama-based series. I have a few if you're interested. I won't put them out on Facebook just in case people get offended.
This is why we have 2 TVs at our house.
Right.
We don't always watch the same.
We have 2
TV.
TVs in our house.
I listen to a lot of music too, and I always have it on, but sometimes now I get more time to just sit and listen.
Yes. So reading. Oh, reading. I'm in a book club. I do a lot of audiobooks and things like that.
Awesome. Someone wants to know if we're going to get to hear you play trumpet on the Facebook Live.
Yeah, probably not.
And then they want to know where you became so anointed to play the trumpet.
I love the time that I was able to worship on my horn, and for me that was that ability to give expression and not be limited to my voice was a special way for me to engage personally in the presence of God, and so thankful for all those years that people put up with it, and thank you for the encouragement.
People miss it. Okay, we're taking live questions.
We're actually not sure how long ago this taping stopped, and we may have just been having a conversation with ourselves at this point.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, that was really it. Unless you guys want to share any secret talents you have. That was the last fun question.
Secret talents.
That no one knows about. People who have known you for 35 years wouldn't
Okay.
know this about you.
We both rode crew in college,
Whoa.
but you didn't know that?
No.
We have pictures.
Can we see them?
Sure.
That'd be amazing.
You'll have to go find them.
That's awesome.
Yep.
All right, guys. I want you guys to send us off with a blessing, and Facebook Live. We just want to say thank you for joining us. Breathe life over us. Bless the family, mom and dad, and we'll call it a night.
Love you guys.
Love you guys.
Thanks for joining us.
Yes.
And keep tuning in. We have Pastor Donna on Friday. I think we have live worship scheduled tomorrow night. These are all great times to connect, and we love it when you guys comment.
Yes.
We
want to
read
hear
them, and it feels like we're having a conversation.
Yeah, we want to hear what you want to know more about.
Good night
Sure.
now.
Night.